Story 1. The figure on the highway. The moment I spotted the silhouette standing in the middle of the highway at 3:15 in the morning, my foot slammed down on the brake pedal. But when my headlights fully illuminated her, every drop of blood in my veins turned to ice. Her eyes were pitch black, like two empty voids staring directly at me. My name is Robert. I'm 35 years old, and I've been driving trucks for over 11 years now. I've traveled nearly every highway across Mexico, from Tijuana all the way to Cancun, and I thought I'd seen it all. But that February night in 2019 forever changed everything I believed about what's possible on these roads. I had left Querétaro heading toward Monterrey, hauling a load of appliances that needed to be delivered before noon the following day. I chose to drive through the night because there's less traffic and I can make better time. The first 3 hours went smoothly. The highway was practically empty, just me and the darkness surrounding my truck. I had the radio playing norteño music to help me stay alert and awake. It was around 3:15 in the morning when I reached an especially isolated stretch of road. There was no street lighting whatsoever, only my headlights cutting through the blackness ahead. The highway ran straight as an arrow, with open fields extending on both sides. Suddenly, about 600 feet ahead, I noticed something. A person standing right in the middle of the right lane. I slowed down, thinking it must be someone whose vehicle had broken down. Maybe they needed assistance. But something felt wrong about the situation. As I got closer, I could make out that it was a woman dressed entirely in white. Long black hair fell over her shoulders. I came to a complete stop about 150 feet away. She didn't move. She wasn't waving for help, wasn't trying to get out of the way. She just stood there motionless, staring toward my truck. I honked twice. Nothing. She remained perfectly still. My heart started pounding harder. I decided to inch forward slowly. When I was roughly 60 feet away, something in my gut screamed at me to go no further. Her eyes were completely black, like two empty holes in her pale face. She wasn't blinking. She wasn't breathing. She just stared at me with those hollow eyes. I felt every hair on my body stand on end. With trembling hands, I changed lanes to go around her. The instant I passed beside her, I turned my head to look through the side window. She turned her head too, following me with those void-like eyes, but her body stayed frozen in place. Her face showed absolutely no expression. I hit the gas. I floored the accelerator. My only thought was getting as far away from that spot as humanly possible. I looked in my rearview mirror and saw her, still standing in the middle of the highway, watching me drive away. And then, in the blink of an eye, she vanished. She simply disappeared into thin air, as if she had never been there at all. I arrived in Monterrey 3 hours later, still shaking. I didn't tell anyone what I'd witnessed that night. They would have just thought I was exhausted from the drive. But I know what I saw. Since then, I avoid that stretch of highway. And when I have no choice but to pass through there, I make absolutely sure to do it during daylight hours, with the sun shining. Never again at dawn. Never again. Story 2. The Phantom Passenger. The sulfur smell that flooded my cabin jolted me awake instantly. Something was wrong. Very wrong. And when I looked toward the passenger seat, I realized I wasn't alone. My name is Daniel. I'm from Colombia, and I've worked as a cargo truck driver for 8 years. That August night, I was transporting a load of food products from Bogota toward the coast. The route I'd taken is notorious for being dangerous, not so much because of poor road conditions, but because of the stories people tell. I'd heard rumors of strange appearances, of truckers who swore they'd seen things they couldn't explain. But I'm skeptical by nature. I don't believe in that stuff. Or at least I didn't believe, until that particular night. It was close to 2 in the morning, and I decided to pull into a rest area. I parked the truck, shut off the engine, and reclined my seat to grab a couple hours of sleep. The night was quiet. You could only hear the wind and some crickets in the distance. I fell asleep quickly. I don't know exactly how much time passed, maybe an hour, when I woke up because of that smell. A penetrating sulfur odor, like rotten eggs, but far more intense. I opened my eyes, and the first thing I noticed was that it had become freezing cold inside the cabin. My breath was forming visible clouds in front of my face, something bizarre considering we were in the middle of summer. I sat up in my seat and looked around. And that's when I saw him. In the passenger seat, where there should have been absolutely no one, sat a man. He wore ancient-looking clothing, like from the 1970s, a faded plaid shirt and worn-out pants. His skin was extremely pale, almost grayish. And then I noticed something that made my blood run cold. He wasn't breathing. His chest wasn't moving up or down at all. I sat there paralyzed, unable to move a single muscle. The man slowly turned his head toward me. His eyes were completely white, no pupils, no irises, just milky white staring directly at me. He opened his mouth and spoke in a raspy, deep voice. "I had an accident here many years ago," he said, "on a night just like this one. Nobody stopped to help me. Nobody. I died alone in the ditch beside this road." Terror gripped me completely. My hand squeezed the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. "I'm so sorry," I stammered, not knowing what else to say. "But you stopped," he continued. "You're a good person. That's why I'm going to warn you. Don't continue on this highway tonight. Turn off at the next exit. There's something ahead, something dangerous." "What's ahead?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to hear the answer. "A tanker truck is going to overturn in 20 minutes, right at the curve past kilometer 45. It explodes. Everyone dies." I felt the air escape from my lungs. I glanced at the kilometer marker. We were at 38. "How do you know this?" I whispered. "Because I've seen it. Many times. Every time it rains like this, it happens again. It's a cycle I can't break. But you can save yourself." I blinked, trying to process what I was hearing. When I opened my eyes again, the passenger seat was empty. The man had vanished. The sulfur smell dissipated instantly. The temperature returned to normal. I didn't wait another second. I started the engine and got out of that place as fast as I could. At kilometer 40, I saw the exit, and, without thinking twice, I turned the wheel. I took the alternate route that added an hour to my journey. When I finally arrived at the coast and turned on the radio, I heard the news report. A tanker truck had overturned on the main highway that night, right at kilometer 45. It had exploded. 3 people dead. I should have been there. I should have been at that exact spot at that exact time. But I wasn't, thanks to that man who appeared in my cabin that night. I'll never know who he was, or what he was. I only know that he saved my life. Story 3. The repeating highway. The last time I drove past that curve on the highway, I could have sworn I saw the same accident I'd witnessed 10 years earlier, with the same people, in the same exact location, at the same time, as if time had frozen, or was repeating itself in an endless loop. My name is Arturo. I'm 52 years old, and I've worked as a delivery driver for over 20 years. I know every highway, every curve, every town in the state of Veracruz. But there's one particular spot that sends chills down my spine every single time I have to pass through there. It all started 10 years ago, in December 2014. It was 11 o'clock at night, and I was returning from a delivery in Zalapa. The road was wet. It had been raining all afternoon. I was driving carefully, slowly, knowing how treacherous that route can be when it's damp. I came around a sharp curve, and then I saw it. A small white car, overturned in the ditch. Smoke was pouring from the engine. I hit the brakes immediately and pulled over to the side. I jumped out of my truck with my flashlight and ran toward the vehicle. There were 3 people inside. A man behind the wheel, a woman in the passenger seat, and a child in the back. All 3 were unconscious but breathing. I called emergency services right away. While waiting for the ambulance, I tried to help them as best I could. The ambulance arrived 20 minutes later. The paramedics carefully extracted all 3 people from the car. Before leaving, one of them thanked me. "If you hadn't found them, they wouldn't have survived," he told me. I felt good knowing I'd helped. The years went by. That incident remained as just another story in my memory. But then, exactly 1 month ago, on December 15th, 2024, something impossible happened. I was on the same highway, the same route, at approximately the same time. 11 at night, and when I reached that curve, there it was again, the same white car, overturned, in the exact same spot, smoke pouring from the engine. My first thought was that it must be another accident at the same location, but when I got out and approached with my flashlight, I felt my blood turn to ice. It was the same car, the same license plate, the same dent in the rear door that I remembered from 10 years ago. And inside were the same three people, the man, the woman, the child, in the same positions, wearing the same clothes. This has already happened, I whispered to myself. 10 years ago, I was here. I helped them. I called emergency services again, even though my mind was in complete chaos. While waiting, I approached the driver's window. The man slowly opened his eyes and looked at me. "Thank you for stopping," he said in a weak voice. The exact same words he'd said to me 10 years earlier. The ambulance arrived. The same paramedics, or at least that's how it seemed to me. One of them approached me when they finished. "If you hadn't found them, they wouldn't have survived," he said. The exact same words from 10 years ago. I couldn't speak. I just nodded and returned to my truck. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely grip the steering wheel. The next day, I called the hospital where the victims had been taken a decade earlier. After searching their records, they confirmed that those three people had been treated for an accident on that same highway. But when I asked if they had any record from the night of December 15th, 2024, they said no. No accident victims had arrived that night. I have no explanation for what I saw. I don't know if it was a time loop, if it was a ghost, or if my mind played a cruel trick on me. But I know what I saw. The same accident, the same people, the same place, exactly 10 years later. Now I'm afraid it will happen again. Every December 15th. Forever. And I don't know if I should stop next time, or just keep driving and pretend I didn't see anything. If you're enjoying these true terror stories, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that bell icon so you never miss another tale. Now let's continue with more stories. Story 4. Voices on the radio. My truck's radio had been off for 3 hours when it suddenly started playing by itself, and what I heard made me want to abandon the truck and run without looking back. My name is Sandra. I'm one of the few female truck drivers in my state. I'm 41 years old, and I've been doing this job for 15 years. I don't scare easily. I've seen just about everything on these highways. But what happened that March night still keeps me awake at night. I was driving from Guadalajara to Tijuana, a trip I've made hundreds of times before. It was a clear night, no moon, just the stars illuminating the dark sky above. The highway was peaceful, a few cars here and there, but nothing out of the ordinary. I'd been driving for about 3 hours when I decided to turn off the radio. I like to drive in silence sometimes. It helps me concentrate and listen to the truck's engine, catch any unusual sounds that might indicate a mechanical problem. It was close to 1 in the morning when it happened. I was on a particularly isolated stretch, no lighting, no other vehicles in sight. Suddenly, the radio turned itself on, not with static like when you're searching for a station, but directly with clear audio. It was a woman's voice, crying, a heartbreaking, desperate sobbing. "Please," she said between sobs, "please help me. It's so dark. I don't know where I am. Please." I froze. I reached toward the radio to turn it off, but before I could touch it, the voice changed. Now it was a man's voice, deep and cold. Sandra, it said my name, my full name, Sandra Gutierrez. My heart jumped. Nobody knew my name. Nobody could possibly know who was listening to that frequency at that moment. "Who is this?" I shouted at the radio, even though I knew it couldn't answer me like that. "Turn around, Sandra," the voice said. "Look at what's coming behind you." With trembling hands, I adjusted my rearview mirror. At first I saw nothing, just the dark highway behind me. But then, in the distance, I saw lights. Headlights. A vehicle was approaching at high speed. Very fast. Too fast. "It's coming for you," the voice on the radio continued. "You can't escape. It's been following you since you left Guadalajara." Panic took hold of me. I checked my speedometer. I was going 55 miles per hour. I accelerated to 68, 75. The headlights behind me also accelerated, maintaining the same distance. "It doesn't matter how fast you go," the voice said, now with an almost mocking tone. "You can't escape what isn't of this world." Then I saw something that made me scream. In the rearview mirror, between the two headlights of the vehicle following me, there was a figure, a black silhouette, standing on top of the vehicle's roof. swaying with the movement, but never falling off. It had long arms, extremely long arms, that hung down on both sides like dead branches. I floored the accelerator. The truck roared, reaching its maximum speed. 80 miles per hour, 85, 90. But the headlights stayed right there, at the same distance, and that figure remained standing on the vehicle, those long arms swinging. The radio crackled. Now there were multiple voices, all talking at the same time. A cacophony of whispers, screams, crying. Sandra, Sandra, Sandra. They repeated over and over, like some infernal chorus. I saw a sign. Service area 5 kilometers ahead. It was my only option. If there were people there, light, maybe this nightmare would end. I kept the speed maxed out. Every second felt like an eternity. When I finally saw the service area lights ahead, I veered in at full speed. I slammed on the brakes and parked right in front of the convenience store, where there were several people. I looked in the rearview mirror, expecting to see the vehicle that had been following me pull in behind me. But there was nothing. The highway was empty. No vehicle, no figure, nothing. The radio shut itself off, returning to absolute silence. I climbed down from the truck on shaky legs and entered the store. The employee looked at me with concern. "Are you okay, ma'am?" he asked. "You look very pale." I told him what had happened. He shook his head. "You're the third person this month to tell me something similar about this highway," he said. "Always at night. Always on that same stretch." I spent the rest of the night there, waiting for sunrise. I only continued my trip when the sun was completely up. Since then, I never drive at night on that highway, and my truck's radio stays off always. Always. Story 5. The Woman Who Vanished. I'd given rides to dozens of people over my years as a trucker, but when that woman climbed into my cabin that rainy night, I knew something was terribly wrong. And when we arrived at her destination, I discovered she'd been dead for 20 years. I'm Javier, Mexican from Sonora, and I've been a truck driver my entire adult life. I've always enjoyed giving rides to people who need them, especially on lonely highways. You never know when you might need help yourself. It was an October night, raining heavily. The highway between Hermosillo and Guaymas was practically deserted. Visibility was terrible. I could only see a few meters ahead. I was going slowly, carefully, when I spotted a figure on the side of the road. An elderly woman, soaking wet, making signals for me to stop. I braked and pulled over. I rolled down my window. "Need a ride?" I shouted over the sound of the rain. She nodded. "Get in," I told her. She opened the passenger side door and climbed into the truck. The first thing I noticed was the smell. Not the wet clothes smell you'd expect, but a stale odor, like damp earth, and something else I couldn't quite identify. The second thing was her clothing. Though it was soaked, her clothes looked old-fashioned, like from the 1970s. A faded floral blouse and a long skirt. "Thank you for stopping," she said in a soft voice. "No problem," I responded. "Where are you headed?" "To town, about 20 miles from here. To my house." I nodded and pulled back onto the highway. I tried to make conversation. "Bad weather to be out walking on the highway," I commented. She didn't respond right away. She just stared straight ahead, her hands on her lap, motionless. "Yes," she finally said, after an uncomfortable silence. "Very bad weather." Several minutes passed in total silence. Just the sound of rain hitting the truck's roof, and the windshield wipers moving back and forth. I glanced sideways at the woman. Her profile was dimly lit by the dashboard lights. Her skin looked extremely pale, almost grayish. As we approached the town, she indicated for me to turn on a specific street. "Keep going straight, then right at the second corner. My house is the yellow one at the end of the street." I followed her directions. When we arrived in front of an old, deteriorated house with faded yellow paint, she spoke again. "This is it. Thank you very much." I put the truck in park and turned to say goodbye, but the passenger seat was empty. The woman had disappeared. The seat was completely dry, no trace of water, as if she had never been there at all. I felt a chill run down my spine. I got out of the truck in the rain and knocked on the door of the yellow house. After a few minutes, a man about 60 years old answered. "Yes," he asked suspiciously. "Excuse me," I said, trying to explain the unexplainable. "I just brought a lady here. She said this was her house, but she disappeared from my truck. The man looked at me with a strange expression, a mixture of sadness and resignation. "Describe this woman to me," he said. I described her appearance, her old-fashioned clothes. The man sighed deeply. "That was my mother," he said in a broken voice. "She died 20 years ago, on this exact date, October 15th. She was walking home in the rain when she was hit on that highway. She never made it home. I felt the ground shift beneath my feet." The man continued. "Several truck drivers have come here over the years. They all tell the same story. They pick her up on the highway. She tells them she's going home, and when they get here, she vanishes. It's as if her spirit keeps trying to complete that last journey she never finished." I didn't know what to say. I just mumbled an apology and returned to my truck. For the rest of the trip to Guaymas, I couldn't stop thinking about that woman, about her need to get home, about how some souls get trapped, repeating the same journey over and over again. Since that night, every time I pass along that highway in October, I look toward the side of the road, but I've never seen her again. Maybe because I already helped her get home once, or maybe because now I know who she is, and some things only appear when you're not expecting them. Those were the 5 highway terror stories. If you know any similar story or have experienced something paranormal on the road, leave it in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe for more real terror stories. Until next time.